Santa Cruz, California. July 26th, 2015. A perfectly quiet, warm Sunday evening. The exact kind of night where absolutely nothing feels off. 6:08 p.m. A 911 call drops. The mother's voice is trembling. Her 8-year-old daughter stepped outside to ride her scooter. That was over an hour ago. And now? She vanished. The final confirmed sighting was at exactly 5:07 p.m. Someone caught a quick glimpse of this little girl cruising past the community mailboxes on a white scooter. Then, absolute silence. No noise. Zero trace. Like the earth literally opened up and took her. Cops swarm the apartment complex in minutes. They start clearing every single corner. Garages, stairwells, storage lockers, dirty dumpsters. Neighbors quickly jump in. You've got dozens of locals tearing through every inch of this property because it makes zero sense. Kids don't just vanish into thin air this completely from such a tiny, tight-knit place. For almost 24 solid hours, they find absolutely nothing. Then, Monday evening, July 27th, detectives head back to an area they totally already searched the recycling bins. A cop pops the lid on one of them. Instantly, a frantic missing child search twists into something incredibly dark. A few hours later, the police drop a bombshell. They've got a suspect. This wasn't some random drifter. He lived right there in the exact same complex. Get this. He was actually out there with everyone during the hunt, just watching people, asking weird questions, hovering near the cops. But once they popped that bin, he bolted. Took off running before anyone even announced what they found. The kid was only 15 years old. This is the story of Madison Middleton. Honestly, it's one of the most utterly devastating and legally messed up true crime mysteries in California's history. Real quick, before we get deeper into this madness, hit the comments with your city and let me know exactly what time you're watching this. Seeing where you guys tune in from is always wild. Oh, and if dark, twisted true crime deep dives are your thing, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. Alright, let's break this down. Because the dark secrets this tragedy exposed about our justice system had the whole country asking the exact same thing. Is this actually what justice looks like? Look, to really grasp the tragedy here, you've got to know who Maddie was. Madison Middleton, everybody just called her Maddie, was 8 years old. She had this massive, unforgettable spark that just stuck with you. She called the Tannery Arts Center out in Santa Cruz home, living there with her mom, Laura Jordan. It's this really unique spot, set up as affordable housing meant for local artists and families. A place where neighbors shared common spaces, swapped creative ideas, and actually had each other's backs. The exact kind of neighborhood where kids ran wild until the streetlights buzzed on. People left their front doors unlocked. Honestly, for a kid like Maddie, it seemed like an absolute paradise to grow up in. This girl had creativity running through her veins. She'd constantly paint these tiny plastic animal figures, invent massive backstories for them, and put on these little homemade theater shows. She'd sing, dance, and sketch. Anything that let her put a piece of her vibrant personality out into the world. Laura said her daughter had this profoundly gentle soul, the type of kid who'd totally cross a crowded room just to sit with a lonely stranger who seemed down. Super smart, incredibly intuitive, and constantly rocking a huge grin. Inside the community, she was that girl who could literally spark up a chat with anyone, win over new friends in seconds, and completely own a conversation effortlessly. Michael Middleton, her dad, was this rock-solid fixture in her day-to-day. And honestly, the three of them shared this beautiful bond that actually meant something deep. Not just relatives on paper. They were fiercely loyal. Maddie was their entire absolute universe. July 26th landed on a Sunday, and Maddie was out there aggressively soaking up every last drop of her weekend. One of her buddies dropped by. As they wrapped up a board game with Laura, Maddie figured she'd take her brand new scooter out for a quick spin. She'd just received the thing a couple days prior and was dying to shred around the courtyard before the sun went down. She felt totally safe out there. She basically knew that entire property completely blindfolded. Plus, literally every single resident knew who she was. A couple of the locals saw her zooming around that afternoon. She kept pausing to chat with the neighborhood kids, looking completely carefree and happy. At exactly 5:07 p.m., she cruised by the mailboxes. Nobody ever laid eyes on her again. When she didn't walk back inside, a panicked Laura immediately started pounding on neighbors' doors. This tannery place packed roughly 100 units across 8 sprawling acres, with every single door that cracked open and every confused neighbor shaking their head. No, the dread just skyrocketed. Something felt horribly off. Sure, Maddie was super independent, but she knew the ground rules. Never wander away. Stay close. Ignore strangers, period. She wasn't the kid to just vanish. Everybody in her circle grasped that terrifying fact immediately. Cops showed up fast. They treated it like a massive red flag instantly. Even so, they refused to push an Amber Alert. Officials basically claimed her disappearance didn't check the rigid boxes needed to set one off. A choice that sparked massive anger later. Speaker 1, in danger. Speaker 2, I'm Kirby. Speaker 1, I know Kirby. Just checked over there. All right, so what do you remember about what she was doing outside? Kirby, cruising on her brand new scooter. It's this white Razor. She had a black helmet strapped on. She had on this little purple dress, looking as happy as you can imagine wheeling around. Speaker 1, right, did anybody bother checking with friends to see if she went off with them? 8 years old, vanished. Yeah, we checked every single door. Cops swept every loft. We reviewed all the security footage. Look, we literally had people out searching through the whole night. Could there be somebody else out there? Maybe an older friend? Some adult she somehow crossed paths with recently? I can't think of a single person. Has she ever just wandered off? No, absolutely not, not even once. She never leaves the complex. She knows exactly which areas are totally off limits to her. She was just hanging out in the main courtyard, right where she always is. She walked this way, and then poof. That was the last time the cameras caught her. So what's the next move? I have to ask, how agonizing is it, just sitting there knowing your hands are completely tied right now? You try your best, but look, I already broke down. Right now, it's pure survival mode. I honestly can't even put this nightmare into words. No parent should ever endure this. What went down next was a giant, fully coordinated ground hunt. Local police, county search and rescue squads, and tracker dogs hit the streets. Darkness crept in fast, and when the sun came up, dead silence, zero clues. Around 11 a.m. on July 27th, about 50 feds swooped in to take control. Agents knocked on every single door, demanding locals search their sheds, garages, and backyards around the block. Good afternoon. Thanks for tuning in with us today. We're starting off with breaking updates on that missing 8-year-old girl out of Santa Cruz. During a morning presser, local cops announced they're pushing the grid to a 4.5 square mile radius. They've also brought in the FBI to drop heavy resources onto this case. Right now, teams in bright orange vests are swarming massive chunks of the city. Everyone's just praying for a single clue about Madison Middleton. The 8-year-old vanished on a Sunday afternoon. People nearby last spotted her around 5 o'clock yesterday near the arts complex. The whole neighborhood is out looking now. She was such an amazing kid. We would have heard something. I seriously can't wrap my head around it. None of us can. Someone should have heard her. She was literally standing right there. Other moms and dads found out about the disappearance dropping their own kids off for dance practice at the center. Honestly, it's just devastating. It makes my stomach drop. I keep telling my boy that they're definitely going to bring her home. We're just putting good energy out there, praying she comes back to us safe and completely fine. Locals didn't hesitate for a second. They tore through the streets the entire night but turned up absolutely nothing. Everybody's feeling pretty damn useless right now. We went through all the transient spots and those local tent setups. Most of us stayed up straight through till morning, walking all the way to Paradise Park. But cops claim there's zero proof Maddie got snatched. So, officially, it remained a missing person file. We are absolutely not labeling this an abduction. Things are just way too fresh right now. The official stance is simple: we're trying to track down a lost kid. By late afternoon, deputies began locking down cars at the lot entrance. They were digging for any shred of evidence about missing little Maddie Middleton. Hundreds of ordinary people flooded the streets to help. The tip line exploded with over 1,000 calls. People drove from towns away to help because something about this story just felt deeply, unsettlingly wrong. An 8-year-old kid in a close-knit neighborhood. Zero clues. Hitting the 24-hour mark, detectives made a massive pivot. The time frame between when Maddie vanished and when the 911 call dropped was extremely tight. They started believing the horrible truth was hidden right there inside the building. So they shrank the perimeter. They ripped through the exact same spots again, this time with surgical precision. Right past 8 p.m. on July 27th, they found her, stuffed inside a recycling bin on the property, barely a day after she went dark. A body matching the description of the 8-year-old. Madison Middleton turned up inside a dumpster nearly 24 hours after vanishing from her neighborhood. Right at 8 p.m. yesterday, cops aggressively cleared the area. They shoved everyone onto the sidewalk once Maddie's body was discovered under the building. The lab techs and the medical examiner will eventually confirm all the grim details. But honestly, right now we just have no idea what happened. A detective later admitted the whole squad felt completely sick to their stomachs, but they forced themselves to snap out of it. The rescue mission was dead. This was a murder investigation now. And before midnight hit, the cuffs were already on somebody. Breaking news. Santa Cruz authorities just locked up a 15-year-old local kid for the horrific abduction and suspected murder of that 8-year-old girl. Here's the sickest part. The true shocker wasn't even the killer's age. It was the absolute nightmare that a teenage predator had been hiding in plain sight. Late last night, cameras actually caught the moment cops hauled a neighbor away in cuffs. We had to blur the footage. Just hours earlier, a completely frantic woman was literally screaming her lungs out right in the complex's parking lot as the raid went down. Locals claimed she was the teenager's mom. Then, right around 7:55 p.m., suddenly, a Santa Cruz investigator decided to dig deeper, running a massive secondary sweep of the Tannery Arts Center. They zeroed right in on an enclosed recycling dumpster shoved deep inside that bottom floor parking structure. That's exactly where they found little Maddie's body. Let me just put it this way. Whoever dumped her in that trash bin made absolutely sure she wasn't going to be easily found. Get this. A 15-year-old kid lived right upstairs from the exact spot where they discovered her remains. And worse, he was hovering right there while the cops pulled her out. Police immediately grabbed him, threw him in a cruiser, and hauled him straight downtown to the Santa Cruz station for heavy questioning. Those detectives hammered that teenager with questions in the interrogation room, pushing deep into the dark hours of the early morning. By sunrise, they officially booked the kid for the brutal murder of Madison Milton. Plus, detectives uncovered hard proof directly tying this teenager to the sick crime. It honestly looks like he tricked her into visiting his place. And even more disturbing, they figured out Maddie was literally killed right inside his unit. Cops are dead set on one fact. This guy pulled off the whole nightmare solo. I gotta give massive credit to my crew who completely exhausted themselves on this hunt. People were pulling 36-hour shifts, running purely on the desperate hope of bringing Maddie home alive. Anybody watching this can totally understand the sheer panic. I'm a parent. Lots of you out there are too. So trust me when I say this whole nightmare absolutely broke my team and me. Look, the entire squad held on to this desperate sliver of faith that she'd survive. Then we got the brutal call last night. She was gone. Honestly, it just gutted us completely. Pure hell. By the night of July 28th, the whole shattered neighborhood finally came together for a candlelight vigil. Folks everywhere are practically sleepwalking right now, totally shell-shocked. I mean, that's exactly where my head is at, you know? Just wandering around completely dead inside. God, I can't even stomach the thought of this happening to my own family or a best friend. Neighbors just stared at the exact courtyard where Maddie normally rode her little scooter, everyone desperately trying to wrap their heads around the impossible. Because beneath all that suffocating grief, there was this thick, poisonous layer of paranoia. The killer was underage, so the law heavily shielded his actual identity for those first terrifying couple of days. 0 names, no mugshots, absolutely nothing except the sickening fact that the monster was one of their own, a literal teenager. And that massive cover-up naturally bred a totally different breed of terror. You've got residents trapped in the same buildings, walking past identical doors, secretly side-eyeing every single kid they cross paths with. Whispers spread like wildfire. Panic hit harder. Then Jeff Roselle, the Santa Cruz district attorney, finally stepped up to the mics and flipped the script entirely. He point-blank verified they had rock-solid proof pinning the kid to the slaughter. The district attorney declared they were coming after this teenager as a full-grown adult, emphasizing it definitely wasn't just some solitary slap on the wrist. We're talking multiple hardcore felonies to match the sheer evil of the act. The guy's delivery was ice-cold and crystal clear. No tragic mistake. No sweeping this horror under the rug. Right then and there, the justice system decided to throw the absolute heaviest book at him. And they did. Look, under very specific conditions, especially dealing with incredibly savage crimes, the legal rulebook actually allows prosecutors to bypass the juvenile system entirely to prosecute a minor, like a fully grown man. Looking at the disturbing facts we've gathered right now, it seriously looks like we can slap him with big league adult felonies. And trust me, my office is totally pushing for exactly that. Because this level of darkness absolutely demands adult-level consequences. Shortly after that massive press conference, the secrecy vanished, and his name officially dropped. The accused killer was Adrian Jerry Gonzalez. Locals just called him AJ, just 15 years old. He and his mom had been renting a spot in that exact same building for roughly 6 long years. For his actual friends, the news was a total mind-bender. AJ simply didn't scream future killer to the folks hanging out with him. Well, not in any obvious way they noticed back then. Everyone practically swore he was just a nice, chill teenager who always smiled. He was the teenager hanging out in the courtyard, showing the little kids yo-yo tricks and basic piano chords. Exactly the type of older kid moms and dads completely trusted around their own children. Safe, familiar, or so everybody thought, which made the actual truth absolutely gut-wrenching to swallow. Neighbors started obsessively replaying every single hello on the stairs, every casual wave in the courtyard. They desperately tried to square the polite kid they knew with the absolute monster the police were now describing. Honestly, most of them never really could. It completely broke the neighborhood's sense of safety. But here is the thing: when you start digging into his past, the warning signs were actually screaming right in front of them. Just look at his social media. It showed this entirely different, hidden version of him nobody took seriously. Super dark stuff, heavy and twisted. Not your typical teenage angst either. This was deeply disturbing, unaddressed psychological trouble staring everyone in the face. Rumors floated around about animal cruelty too. One close friend even begged him to get professional help after he started making really unsettling comments about wanting to do physical harm to himself. Just tiny, isolated red flags nobody bothered putting together. But stack them up, you get a terrifying picture of a kid hiding some seriously dark demons right under everyone's noses. The cops first zeroed in on him because of how weirdly he acted near the trash bins. Everyone else is panicking, tearing the place apart looking for her. But Ajay, he's just dead staring at the officers. It definitely was not the face of a neighbor hoping for a safe return. The kid looked totally rigid, completely calculated. And the second the cops actually found something, he bolted. Didn't say a word. He took off running before anyone announced a single thing or even opened up that bin. That exact moment gave the detectives all they needed. People don't just sprint away from a horrible update they haven't heard yet unless they're the one who caused it. The creepiest part of all this, during that frantic neighborhood sweep, he actually played the helpful neighbor, mingling, asking questions, intentionally injecting himself right into the middle of the gossip just to see what the cops knew. Sure looked like genuine concern at first. Looking back, that was pure damage control from a killer. Once detectives finally dragged him into the interrogation room, his whole fake persona crumbled almost immediately. The lies just fell apart. His timeline kept changing, and his bizarre reactions gave the cops every reason to press harder. We still don't have the entire transcript of that room. The courts kept it sealed tight because he was underage. But eventually, he cracked. AJ fully confessed to the police, admitting he completely tricked little Maddie into walking into his place with the promise of ice cream. She trusted him, right? No reason to be scared. But the second she crossed that threshold, he violently attacked her. That totally unprovoked ambush ended her life. After that, he literally carried her body outside and dumped her like trash in the very recycling bins the cops later searched. The crime lab eventually backed up this absolute nightmare of a timeline. It proved she was actually already gone before her mom made that frantic 911 call at 6:08 p.m. on July 26th. District Attorney Jeff Roselle wasn't playing games with this one. Ajay was looking dead at a potential life sentence. Charging this kid as a full-grown adult? Not even up for debate. It was honestly the only move that made sense given how vicious the murder was. The prosecutor basically labeled AJ a lethal threat to society, and he meant it literally. That specific threat level became the anchor for the state's entire legal strategy. Judge Salazar looked at the files and backed the state right away. AJ was headed straight to adult court. With a taped confession and rock-solid evidence, the path to justice looked totally locked in. Then AJ surprisingly pleaded not guilty, even after literally confessing. That massive slap in the face just pushed an already furious community right to the absolute breaking point. But that courtroom momentum completely stalled out. His lawyers fought like hell to drag the trial back to juvenile court. Their entire strategy banked on this brand new California law that had just dropped Senate Bill 1391. This new ruling was absolutely absolute. It straight up banned charging 14 or 15-year-old suspects as adults, no matter how brutal or premeditated the crime actually was. Zero loopholes. No judge could override it. The rule was final. Because he was exactly 15 when he committed the murder, the adult penal system couldn't even touch him. His team also started blaming his background. They claimed a bad home life, school problems, and intense loneliness messed him up, basically trying to spin a sympathetic narrative to explain exactly how a 15-year-old magically turns into a cold-blooded killer. But anybody who actually knew the Gonzalez family violently rejected that sob story. His mom, Reggie, escaped an awful, abusive ex to completely rebuild things from scratch. She fought her own demons, beat them, and literally dedicated her entire world to those kids. Family friends swore up and down that the lawyer's pathetic excuses were total garbage. The prosecutors didn't hold back. Sure, people suffer. They lose everything, they break, but they don't do what AJ did. Not a chance. A bad childhood? Not an excuse. Thousands begged the state to block Senate Bill 1391 from touching this horrifying case. People were absolutely furious, protesting everywhere. But angry signatures don't magically rewrite the law. It dragged on through endless legal nightmares. Until the California Supreme Court dropped the hammer, they were bumping this monster down to juvenile court. That decision crushed the entire town, just absolutely devastated them. Breaking tonight, a shocking reversal. The guy accused of slaughtering 8-year-old Maddie Middleton, he's somehow headed back to the juvenile justice system. The state's highest court just backed a 2018 law. It completely shields teenagers from adult trials if they were 14 or 15 when the bloodshed happened. Adrian, who goes by AJ Gonzalez, was only 15 in 2015 when he allegedly dragged Middleton into his mom's Santa Cruz apartment and destroyed her. He'd been sitting in an adult cell at the Santa Cruz County Jail for years, locked away where he belonged. A total betrayal. That's how Maddie Middleton's family described it. Early Thursday, California's Supreme Court rubber-stamped Senate Bill 1391 during the OG versus Ventura County showdown. The rule? 14 and 15-year-olds are practically untouchable by adult courts. We're just completely sickened. Look, I've talked to the relatives, they are broken. After 9 grueling weeks of expert testimony, the facts are terrifyingly clear. This kid, putting him back in a local juvenile hall, is a massive, incredibly dangerous mistake. The defense claimed he thrived in lockdown, loved the therapy, the classes, the rigid daily schedule. Teenagers supposedly get to actual help there. They avoid regular penitentiaries where you just end up learning how to be a better criminal. A crime this evil, with a victim so innocent, being downgraded to a facility designed just for fixing kids instead of punishing them? Justice felt completely dead. Even Judge Salazar saw the madness of it all. He admitted his hands were legally tied. The law trapped him in a corner with zero wiggle room. He wasn't defending the sickening outcome at all. Honestly, he was exposing a broken system. The judge himself seemed disgusted that a savage killing like this slipped through the cracks. He didn't stop there. He warned that giving every 14 and 15-year-old an automatic pass puts the public in serious danger. Because some of these kids, they are way past the point of being saved. A chilling confession from a sitting judge. Fast forward to April 2021, over 5 years since the murder, and AJ suddenly flips his plea. Tonight's major headline, a massive twist in the brutal slaying of 8-year-old Maddie Middleton. Earlier today, prime suspect Adrian AJ Gonzalez finally admitted to everything. He took the fall for 6 terrifying felonies tied to what he did to that girl. Legally, the case was shut, but if you asked her parents, closure was just an empty, meaningless word. For 5 brutal years, they rotted in sterile waiting rooms and survived endless delays, forced to relive their daughter's violent end on a loop. A confession doesn't bring a dead child back. It merely slams the door on the courtroom nightmare. Before the hammer fell, AJ actually spoke. Voice barely above a whisper, he admitted the horrific damage he'd done, begging the family for future forgiveness. Honestly, the apology felt like a sick joke compared to the butchery he committed. For Maddie's parents, the moment was pure, unadulterated torture, staring into the eyes of the monster who shattered their universe while he had the nerve to ask for grace. Michael, her father, stepped up to explain his personal hell. Against all odds, fighting through unimaginable trauma, he claimed he'd finally reached a place of forgiveness, not to help AJ sleep better, just to save himself. It was literally his only escape from descending into complete, irreversible madness. He figured Maddie would have understood. Make no mistake, this wasn't some Hollywood ending with magical relief. It was something much colder. Pure survival. A father refusing to let the abyss swallow him too. But Laura's reality was entirely different. She's locked in a permanent nightmare of severe depression and crippling PTSD. Time hasn't healed a damn thing for her. The terror dictates her sleep and paralyzes her days. Working is completely impossible. Making coffee feels like lifting boulders. She isn't just moving past the tragedy. The loss is stitched into her bones. Meanwhile, Salazar slammed him with the absolute maximum juvenile penalty, meaning the killer would walk totally free at age 25, sometime around October 2024. 25. That single number triggered an absolute firestorm, devastating the family and sending total shockwaves through legal circles nationwide. Breaking news tonight, crowds are actively swarming the Santa Cruz County Courthouse. Protesters are furious, demanding answers about this controversial California sentencing mandate. The system mandated Gonzalez be sentenced as a juvenile. He was 15, barely 16, when he brutally took Maddie Middleton's life. And because of that one technicality, his status as a child during the slaughter, he'd walk totally free in exactly 4 years, hitting his 25th birthday. Knowing this nightmare had an actual expiration date baked right in, it was completely sick. Try him as an adult, and this monster would easily be rotting away for multiple lifetimes. But the juvenile system built a hard ceiling, and that ceiling came with an exact countdown. Still, one desperate loophole remained. If prosecutors could prove he was still a massive threat to society, they might just keep him locked up past 25. District Attorney Roselle wasn't backing down. He planned to fight tooth and nail using that exact strategy, though he bluntly admitted it was a massive gamble. Letting AJ walk at 25, he warned, wouldn't just be a catastrophic failure of the courts, it would unleash a terrifying danger onto the streets. This wasn't just standard legal posturing. It was raw, unadulterated anger directed at a completely broken framework tying his hands behind his back. Look, the juvenile justice system obviously needs some serious overhaul. Reform makes sense, naturally, but these rigid blanket laws? They completely ignore absolute monsters like Adrian. We brought in veteran child psychologists, people with 30 years under their belts, and they swore they'd never encountered a mind this terrifyingly twisted. Literally never. Anyone naive enough to believe this kid will magically be cured and ready to safely walk among us by 25 is absolutely kidding themselves. As for AJ, no matter what happens next, two hard facts remain. First, AJ is legally bound to register as a sex offender until the day he dies. His name stays permanently burned into police databases long after he gets out. Oh, and the judge slapped him with $22,000 in restitution. A purely symbolic number, honestly, because no amount of cash could ever wipe away that kind of evil. Maddie's grandfather, Dan Middleton, was absolutely furious. He openly slammed the ruling, arguing the court willfully ignored glaring evidence. AJ was a ticking time bomb. He sounded the alarm on Senate Bill 1391, warning it set a chilling precedent, one that would ambush unsuspecting families in ways nobody was ready for. You could hear the profound exhaustion in his voice, the crushing weight of watching a broken system totally fail his murdered granddaughter. Throughout 2024 into 2025, a Santa Cruz jury finally gathered to make the ultimate call. Would they free AJ at 25, or lock him away for good? The state hammered home the terrifying reality of his ongoing threat. Meanwhile, his defense lawyers desperately spun a narrative of rehabilitation, begging for his freedom. Come February 2025, the final verdict dropped. Ajay wasn't walking free at 25. He'd stay rotting behind bars, his sentence stretched significantly past that original cutoff date. Nobody in town was exactly throwing a parade over this. But for the grieving family, it finally validated their deepest, darkest fears about his danger. Honestly, the thought of him getting out at 25 is absolutely bone-chilling. This bizarre legislation doesn't just destroy my family or our hometown. It completely re-victimizes anyone who's ever crossed paths with a violently dangerous teenager. Look, I'm fully on board with reforming the justice system for both kids and adults. But this wasn't some petty theft or drug bust gone wrong. This was cold-blooded, purely sociopathic slaughter. Professionals literally took the stand saying AJ is completely unhinged. They're comparing him to Ed Kemper. Every single person out there should be terrified. What is the one way you want the world to remember your daughter? Madison was my entire world, just an absolute light. She radiated this incredible joy everywhere she went, so charming and wildly smart. Super artsy, brilliantly creative, and fiercely loving. Total animal fanatic dogs, wolves, you name it. And sharp, too. She'd talk circles around grown adults. Literally fearless. Just a breathtakingly beautiful soul. So full of love, you know. Now she's gone. But I guess there's comfort knowing she stays my perfect little 8-year-old forever. God, I just miss her. Amidst this suffocating legal circus, a profoundly raw, quiet moment happened between two mothers. Two women utterly lost in a nightmare without any kind of survival guide. Laura Jordan and Reggie Gonzalez. The victim's mother and the killer's mother, violently tethered together by a single horrific act that completely obliterated both their realities. Reggie was completely shattered. Locals kept spotting her lurking near Maddie's makeshift memorial, just frozen there, staring into the void, obsessively coming back like she was hunting for an impossible answer. Then Laura did the unthinkable. Shouldering an agonizing amount of grief, she actually walked up, wrapped her arms around the murderer's mother, and whispered that none of this was her fault. Two mothers on opposite sides of an unthinkable nightmare. They called it grace. But looking back, was it? Because the nightmare was just getting started. Not long after, someone smashed right into Michael Middleton's car. He kept Maddie's ashes in there, a desperate attempt to hold on to his little girl. Gone. Snatched by ghosts who vanished without a single trace. Those ashes? Never seen again. Think about that for a second. A secondary violation so cruel, it almost feels targeted. Over at the Tannery Arts Center, the locals reacted the only way they knew how. By banding together and bleeding their trauma onto canvas, trying to force something permanent out of pure agony. Down by the water, just steps from where she lived, they erected this massive metal wolf. Maddie was absolutely obsessed with them. The raw power. How they roam the wild, completely untamed. When the coastal wind hits that metal just right, it lets out this eerie, low-frequency moan, half hum, half howl. Honestly, it sounds exactly like a ghost calling out. The Rio Theater slapped her name right across their marquee, a blaring, everyday reminder to everyone on the street that a predator had walked among them. Tannery artists churned out tribute pieces, just raw, bleeding emotion and dark memories desperately trapped in paint. Hundreds showed up to honor a life cut brutally short. The mayor stepped in, declared October 5th, 2015 her actual birthday, as official Madison Middleton Day, etched into the municipal records forever. Because some victims leave a crater so massive, the town literally can't afford to look away. The family launched a group called Maddie Child of Santa Cruz. Their core warning is dead simple but chillingly necessary. Before you wander off, tell somebody. It's this massive safety push, forcing parents and kids to have those ugly, uncomfortable talks about real-world monsters, using words a child can actually grasp. A desperate bid to ensure her legacy wasn't just a bloody crime scene. But the Tannery, after July 2015, that place changed. Sure, the artists stayed, kept painting, kept watching their neighbors' backs, pretending everything inside those walls was perfectly normal. But the paranoia set in. This creeping, unspoken dread that you are never actually safe, especially not in the spaces where your guard is completely down. Laura called that little girl her greatest creation, the absolute center of her entire universe. This ridiculously bright, trusting kid who left an impression on literally every single person who crossed her path. 8 years old. Yet she somehow understood what takes adults decades to grasp how to stare right into someone's soul, making them feel completely seen the second she walked in. They snuffed that spark out way too early. But it didn't just vanish. It morphed, twisted into a metal beast screaming into the ocean breeze, into neon letters looming over a street, a birthday that now haunts an entire city's calendar, and into the deeply unsettling image of two shattered mothers, clutching each other in the wreckage of a nightmare no human should endure. Maddie was here, and Santa Cruz made damn sure the rest of us would never forget it. The tragic loss of Sarah Yarborough is a profound reminder that our greatest strength lies in unwavering vigilance and the refusal to forget. Sarah was a vibrant soul, a young woman who seized every day with contagious ambition, only to have her future stolen by a predator who had repeatedly slipped through the cracks of a fractured system. The most vital educational lesson from this tragedy is the power of community persistence. For 32 years, her family and investigators anchored themselves to a single promise, that the truth would eventually surface. It teaches us that justice is not always swift, but through scientific evolution and human determination, the phantom in our neighborhoods can be unmasked. Furthermore, this case serves as a haunting propaganda for systemic accountability. We must advocate for a justice system where no bureaucratic blind spot allows a known threat to walk free while innocent lives remain at risk. Sarah's legacy, etched in a granite monument, calls on us to carpe diem, to cherish the safety of our children, and to fight for a world where seizing the day is a promise of life, not a final tragic motto.